At the edge of an international border, at the edge of the Pacific, at the edge of innovation, community, education, and discovery, you're listening to At the Edge of It All, a University of San Diego podcast where USD experts speak on topics and stories that impact you and the broader community. On this episode of At the Edge of It All, we sat down with Professor Viviana Alexandrowicz. She is a professor at the University of San Diego's Learning and Teaching Department, and she talks about her research into how AI is impacting teacher education and how it's changing how teachers teach in the classroom. Let's take a listen. So you're a part of the University of San Diego's Department of Learning and Teaching, and so education is really what you do. Bilingual education is also something that you have sort of focused on in your career. But what got you interested in education to begin with?
So in Chile, I studied journalism, but my interest was always education. So anything I did for my degree was always focused on that. And then when I came to the United States, and I taught in some schools there, and then when I came to the United States, I pursued a master's degree, but I immediately went to a PhD in education because that was really my passion. When I got here, my English wasn't that great. So bilingual education was always a passion of mine. I believe in the asset-based philosophy about people acquiring a second language instead of subtracting a language, just adding a language. It would open so many doors for people. So I focused my PhD dissertation on bilingual education and the preparation of teachers. And after that, I got hired here at the University of San Diego before I finished my PhD 2 years before. So it took me a few years after that to complete it. But I've been here for a long time because I absolutely love this university. I imagine as you specialize in bilingual education, you have a lot to bring to that because it was something you had to deal with too, right? You said you came here and your English wasn't great, and then you really got interested in the idea of bilingual education and how much of a value that is, right? Tell me a little bit of how you brought yourself into that and the teachers that you work with too. Yeah, so the first years I worked here, I taught seminars, bilingual education seminars and all that. But then we had an English-only proposition that was passed in 1998. So bilingual programs at universities died. So what I focused after that was how to teach teachers who are going to have many languages and many cultures in their classroom, how to teach those kids, how to include them, how to use effective strategies so those students have access to the core curriculum, so they learn language they need. So my focus changed a little bit to, okay, now I'm going to prepare English-only teachers to be the best teachers that they can be for these kids. And what are some things that you've been teaching teachers, or if there's a teacher listening at home, what are some tips you have for that, or what are some things you share with teachers? I think the first thing is always to use the pedagogy of care. I think that in education, sometimes we leave out a very important word, which is love. And you have to look at every child and what they bring, not what they lack. Because that's the problem with English language learners. You know, we always look at, they don't know English. They don't know the culture. But they bring a rich culture and language with them. So if we help them acquire a second language and culture, they're going to instantly be bilingual, bicultural. And the idea that we don't want them to learn English is absolutely incorrect, because all we want is for them to learn English, be successful in college if that's what they want to pursue. But they will have that native language as well. So we really want to add the second language and culture, not subtract the first one. Yeah, that's awesome. And along with bilingual education, something you kind of started diving into a little bit with your research was about AI in education and how AI can be a tool for the next generation of teachers, how it can benefit them. How did you segue from bilingual education into AI? And I'm sure there maybe is some overlap too. Yeah. I think it wasn't so much from bilingual education to AI, but from change making to AI. So my other passion is change making. This is a change maker university, and I brought change making to my department. We had many conversations and dialogues on how we can incorporate it in our courses, how to make instructional learning relevant to the real world and to society, and how to better society, and from home to classroom to neighborhood to city to state. So I've been involved in preparing teachers for that, to how can they tweak what they're already doing to have a change maker focus, to help develop empathy, compassion, and critical thinking, and use design thinking to solve problems, real world problems. So I think that my jump was from that to AI. How can we use AI to improve education, to improve the learning, to help people that before may not had the tools to access the curriculum or access learning? And how can we use that now? AI is a powerful tool to do that. So that was my jump.
Yeah, and what was interesting was the jump, actually, your son kind of helped you with introducing you to AI,
Yes.
and I think it was a really interesting story. You want to share a little bit about your first introduction to AI from your son?
So it was a AI ChatGPT came out in November 2022, and in February I was having lunch with my son, who is a YouTuber, and he said, "Hey, Mom, do you know ChatGPT?" And I'm like, "No, I never heard of it." "Oh my gosh." So he started showing me, and I'm like, I could not believe it. I mean, I could not believe the power of this tool. And I immediately told him, I said, this is going to absolutely transform education, the way we teach, the way we learn. I was just, it blew my mind away to the capability, and the capability at that time, much much less than now. So after that, I just started exploring. I started researching. I just started, exploring the possibilities and for us, the implications. What are the implications for us teachers in college, at the university, and in my case, in teacher education? How are we now going to prepare the teachers to use these tools, from a standpoint of being AI literate? So that's how everything started, and now I've dedicated the last 2 years exploring those questions, the questions that we have.
What are some ways that you're researching that you think can help teachers, K through 12 teachers, what can they use AI for in their classrooms?
There are so many uses, but research actually already has shown that teachers can save 4 hours a day. From using it for administrative purposes to instructional purposes. For example, the main one is lesson planning. So there are many AI tools out there that would help teachers to create lesson plans that are aligned to standards, that are, specifically tailored to the needs of the specific students in that class. Let's say if the student has multilingual learners, if the teacher has multilingual learners or has students with neurodivergent students, they can modify those plans accordingly, and the activities that they would include. So they can create materials, they can create quizzes, they can create questions that they're going to ask the kids, scenarios. They can, so students apply what they have learned on these scenarios that are created by AI. But the trick, of course, is prompting. Teachers need to know how to prompt AI. They need to learn a lot about everything about AI. But in this case, based on your question, they really need to know how to prompt AI so it would generate lessons and activities that are appropriate for the kids' academic levels, language levels. Is very important. And teachers that are already in the field, they have had the experience to be able to analyze and evaluate what is generated. Make sure that it is appropriate, that it gives enough, that it takes in consideration the learning needs of the kids.
Did your research work with teachers at all, or look at to see how AI was being used in a classroom and how teachers were benefiting from it? Or was your research more stepping back and looking at how it can help teachers? Was there any focus at all of teachers using it and seeing what the benefit was?
Yeah, my current research, which I'm not going to say too much about because I haven't published the article, but my current research is how teachers are using AI for what purposes. I'm focusing more on second language and foreign language, but still I have a lot of ideas on how they are actually using it. So, for example, they use it to adapt text, that not just for multilingual learners, but for if you are using certain text, you can put it on ChatGPT or any other AI tool, and you can ask for different lexile levels, which are the levels that we use for reading, and it would generate those levels. Teachers couldn't do that before. It was just, or if they did, they just would spend hours and hours on that. They can create, let's say, sentence frames or starters for students to write. I mean, it's infinite, the possibilities that you can do with AI to help you create instructional materials or actual activities for your students. But so yeah, to answer your question, I am currently looking into more and more about the specific uses that teachers, for teachers.
And while teachers can use this as a tool, they're also, I remember when we talked previously, they're supposed to use their own expertise on the matter too, right? So you can use ChatGPT to help you with a lesson.
Yeah.
But then you also recommend looking at the lesson as a credentialed teacher and saying, okay, that actually wouldn't work in my classroom.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea, right? So you need to also use the tools you have, right? And not just kind of take it, put it in your classroom and run with it, right?
Well, and that is interesting because that's one of the issues that new teachers or student teachers, candidates in teacher education programs face because they haven't had the experience. They go to ChatGPT, which I allow in my class actually. And what I have done is reverse the process where instead of them creating the lessons, I ask them to create it on an AI tool. And then they analyze each other's lessons. So with whatever they have learned in my class and all the elements and the effective practices that I've taught them, now they have to have that critical lens to analyze the lessons and say, the lesson, is not doing this and I need to do this. So they add it without AI. So that's how you integrate AI and non-AI as a teacher educator in your courses. And I've done more and more of that because we can't deny that this is going to be at the teacher's fingertips. I mean, they're going to have these tools. So we can get stuck in the past asking them to do everything from scratch when they're going to have this assistant doing this for them. So the most important skill right now that they need, one of the most important skills, is the critical thinking and analyzing this instruction from, okay, I know, this is not a good, effective strategy, so I need to change it. So either they ask ChatGPT or another tool to produce it, or they add it or modify. So that's something to take in consideration in teacher education right now.
Yeah, kind of in line with that. With your research, what are some ethical things that you've kind of seen from it? I mean, that's a large topic. I mean, people are studying AI ethics and everything. What are some of the ethical things that you're looking at for teachers using this?
There's so many issues. And I think that faculty at the university in particular are really feeling it. The fact that, if we continue giving students the same assignments we used to give them, they're going to go home and produce it, ask an AI tool to do it in seconds. And so we're never going to be able to ensure that they get the critical thinking skills. So the first ethical issue is what we call plagiarism. But plagiarism in the age of AI will have to change the meaning of we'll have to change the meaning of what plagiarism is. We're going to have to look into, years ago, for example, when we wrote an article, or students wrote something, they could put it on Grammarly. And Grammarly would suggest edits, corrections. Well, how is that different from, doing it now with an AI tool when I write something and put it in there and ask for correction? It's the same exact thing. The problem we have is to differentiate when the students have written it themselves or is generated by AI, because if you write something and you upload it on an AI tool, it's going to correct it, but at the same time, it's going to change sentences. It's going to probably generate very short sentences, text, typical words that are typical of AI, like enhance, and the voice is very mechanical in lots of times. So students lose their voice. And I have had two students who their responses for reading are very similar. And when I go to the tool and for an answer to that question, I get a similar answer. So I know, but detection tools are not working right now. So I think that the main concern for teachers, secondary teachers and teachers in college is plagiarism. So there are other ethical issues. For example, some teachers are using AI tools to provide suggestions for activities for students, neurodivergent students. So they could upload IEPs, which is the form that they have for every student who has a disability. Well, you can't do that because you can't enter any student name or any personal information about anyone. It's dangerous. So we always have that problem if somebody decides to do that and enter student name. That's an ethical issue too. Some teachers are using the AI tool to provide feedback for assignments. In college and secondary school, if you consider a secondary teacher may have 200 students. So here we have a tool that can help me. I put an essay and say, analyze it, and then I copy and paste and give the student feedback. Is that ethical or not? Those are questions that, I don't have the answer for, that we all going to have to collectively think about it and dialogue about. And that's how we're going to evolve. We have this tool now. Education is going to have to evolve. I recently presented at a conference, and I asked teachers that were in the audience, how important do you think in 20 years is going to be that people can do handwriting, or that they know how to spell? We don't know. Probably not. Just like calculator. How important was for students, after the calculator came out, to do all the computation on their own. So those are the questions that we're going to be answering in the next years. The focus of education may have to change. And I can see how project-based learning, for example, will be a great approach to connect with real life and incorporate skills that we want our students to acquire. And I think that teachers are going to do more in the classroom. I think that they're not going to give students a lot to do at home because they want to make sure that students are acquiring the skills in the classroom.
Yeah, no, there's some interesting points to bring up. But with AI, I think, you kind of touched on it a little bit, is giving teachers some of their time back. From what we hear is teachers spend all day in the classroom, and then when their students leave, they're still working through the night to prepare for the next day, right? So your hope kind of with this new tool is it can save teachers some of their time back, right? And maybe focus on other things. As we wrap up, what are some of the things that you're hoping teachers can take away from this new tool that they have in their toolbox now?
Well, the first thing that I want teachers to know is that AI is not going to replace them, because teachers provide students with social emotional support, with things that AI cannot provide, and if it does, it may be dangerous. We have cases that we have heard about, people looking for social emotional support and getting the wrong advice. But teachers are there for the kids. They get to know each kid. So I think that is a concern of teachers, that they're going to be replaced one day, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be more powerful for them to have these tools. So that's the most important thing I want them to go with. But I think they are, like you're saying, they're going to save hours. They can use the tool to just help them create rubrics, for example, things that are tedious for teachers, that they could spend hours on, to create materials like pictures or videos. They can all be done exactly meeting the objectives that the teachers need to use in classroom. So just all those hours that they spend creating all that, gone.
Well, thank you so much for sharing some of your research with us. I think we learned a lot, and there's a lot of unanswered questions, but that comes with time of just kind of figuring out this new tool, right?
Yeah.
But looking at the benefits as well. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And if you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to catch our next one.